everyone. This is the meeting of the Charlotte City Council on this Wednesday, the very rainy Wednesday, on the 20th. And the purpose and intent of this meeting is to discuss any possible amendment or adjustment to the city manager's recommended proposed budget by the mayor and the council. We held a budget public hearing, and the feedback that we got from the community was in support of the bike ways, more asking for requests of consideration of that, the fire retirement system, and comments around arts. And so we've held our public meeting. We've also had a chance to read through and the manager's recommended budget. So today we will recognize each council member, and you'll be able to comment on the budget overall and any suggestions that you might have for it. After we have all of the council members be able to speak or be recognized, and staff will continue to look for the ideas that you would have, and we'll keep a running tally of those. And at the end of the meeting, our usual practice has been that if there are 5 votes for any proposed change, then it moves forward for the staff to actually flesh out the idea or whatever we're talking about and comment on that. And our next meeting of the budget would be on Wednesday at noon, next Wednesday the 27th at noon. So I hope everyone, especially some of our newer council members, I apologize, I probably should have called and talked about this with you in advance, but I hope that you will get into the swing of it. We won't start with any of you as the first person to be recognized, the first council member to be recognized. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the manager to talk about what has transpired and where he is, and then we'll go from there. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. So at this point in time, during the budget adjustments, typically there's a question that's asked of me, and that is, has anything changed since the last time or since the budget presentation? So we don't have any changes in terms of additional revenue or losses of revenue or changes that are related to the expenditure side. I will tell you that the budget that was presented to you on May 4th was a structurally balanced budget, and I'll go a little bit more in detail what that really means. There is a undesignated fund balance, which is when you take all the revenue and all the expenditures together, of about $72,000. Ryan, is that right?
$71,270.
$71,270. And so that is available as a starting point. I do want to talk a little bit about what has transpired since May 4th. We did have an opportunity to talk with council members about some of the questions that you had, and that was during that week of May 4th, that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, as well as some follow-up conversations the following week. And what was provided for you, I believe, on Monday was a series of questions and answers. And Mr. Driggs, I hope we've done a little bit better than in the past. I think sometimes the concern was getting the answers to the questions the day of the adjustment period. So those were provided on Monday, and I believe those are at your fingertips. Now, a couple things before I turn it back over to the mayor. Just a bit of a reminder that it is your budget right now, and this is the opportunity for any changes that you have. We did have budget principles in this budget that to remain structurally balanced, to provide core service, to protect employees, and to address the budget gap. One thing that's important, and I don't think I did a good job of this on the 4th, is just to talk a little bit about the budget in general and some of the trade-offs, and that's some of the questions that you had during the week after the budget. So the budget is structurally balanced. What I mean by that is that ongoing revenue supports ongoing expenditures. But it's not just structurally balanced in 2021, it is also structurally balanced in 2022. So what do I mean by that? As we take all of the costs that's associated with the 2021 budget and roll those over into 2022, we've established revenue sources that can sustain that. when you take dollars from one time, let's say like fund balance or anything similar to that, you would have to replicate that in 2022, and that's one of the reasons why we didn't have that as a principle. I will tell you, going into 2022, when I say that the budget is still structurally balanced a year out, that doesn't include any assumptions around pay increases, because the pay increase assumptions are for the FY21 budget. So again, still structurally balanced, not just this year but next year. The impact a bit, I do want to talk about that a bit. So there are three buckets, if you will. There's the general fund, which once again, for the most part, pays for police and fire and solid waste transportation, all of those services that we call core services. And then we have a pay-go fund and the capital fund. So yes, we did use some of the future revenue streams that were associated with the pay-go fund to boost back up the general fund. Again, police, fire, solid waste, transportation, our core services. And there is an impact in the out years on pay-go, but that impact is not really the core that you would do with pay-go. Let's say that's roughly $25, $26 million a year. Over the past few years, we've had a bump in pay-go, and we've been able to do some amazing things like aging in place and some of the east-west corridor strategies. But again, the core things that we do with pay-go would still be intact in the out years. The capital investment plan, yes, we did move some revenue from the capital investment plan over to the general fund. And again, there are some trade-offs. And the trade-offs are our total capacity in the out years. The reality is the next time that you would address a bond package would be in FY 2023. So that's a years down the road before that would become a potential issue. And it's not just the revenue that comes in, it's interest assumptions, it is the way that we actually spend the cash. So that's a bit further out. So those were the bulk of the questions. That first week after the budget, it was, sure, I can see how it's balanced, but at what cost? So there is a cost associated with pay-go, which again, for some of those things over and beyond, above what we typically do. And then there's some costs associated with future bond packages, but not the 2020 bond package. Just to bring us up to speed where we are now, this budget was also based on a forecast that had 3 quarters of decline in revenue, the last quarter of FY 2020, which ends in June, and the first 2 quarters of this fiscal year, of the upcoming fiscal year. And our sales tax really drove that decline. If we start to think about the general fund, for the most part, we're talking about property tax and sales tax, which makes up almost 70% of the revenue that comes in. Where we were with the sales tax decline, about 8.5%, is not inconsistent with other large cities across North Carolina. So as we come back in the fall to review where we are after the first quarter of FY 2021, the period that ends September, we'll have a better idea of where we ended in sales tax, because the governor has pushed that payment until July. And we'll have a better idea of where we are in general with the budget. Typically, we don't do that. We do it in January. We'll come back in January. We'll talk to you each month. But January is typically where we have the reforecast. And so we'll have even more data related to sales tax and more data related to expenditures. So I will tell you that where we are right now, I still believe we have a very solid budget for FY 2021, which is structurally balanced with some trade-offs and some other funds. The thing that I would be most cautious about is what would happen with our forecast, which right now is the base forecast. If that gets worse, we would continuously talk with you about where we are with that. But right now, nothing's changed in terms of our expectations or what we know about the 2021 budget. So with that said, Mayor, unless you have questions of me, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to staff ready to address questions if the manager so needs them to. And also on your screens, you can see Allison Craig from Planning, and I believe is Haley on the phone as well? Haley Gentry from Aviation? Well, maybe not. We can call upon her as well, I think. So, all right. So with that, I thought we might start with the districts with questions or comments about the budget, and I thought we might start with Mr. Eggleston, if he's okay with doing that. And then we just go districts 1, 2, and 3. I think Mr. Graham is on the phone, and then we'll do the at-large members and be ready to address questions or comments or suggestions for change. Mr. Eggleston, are you okay?
Yeah,
I wanted to say also, Ms. Johnson, one of the reasons that I did this is so that Ms. Johnson's daughter has had a little bit of surgery today, and, you know, moms are first, council members are second in priority, right? So if Ms. Johnson has to leave, if you have to leave at any time, please let me know to make sure that we get to you, but I think this will get to you fast, okay? Thank you. All right, Mr. Eggleston.
I'll willingly go first as long as I have the opportunity later for rebuttal.
Of course you always do.
I don't have a lot. I think that, and I've said all this to the manager, or most of it, but I think that I had some serious concerns as all of this COVID-19 situation started to evolve, that we were going to have to make some pretty draconian cuts in our budget, and that it was potentially going to involve headcount, people who currently work for us, and that it was going to mean that we couldn't fulfill a lot of the promises we had made and goals that we had stated. So frankly, I was stunned to the point of needing some of that explanation that the manager just gave as to how this was even possible. But so kudos to the manager and to the entire budget team for being able to make sure that we are not eliminating people who currently work for us, that we're not falling short on the promises we've made to our constituents, and that we're not raising taxes in a time where a large percentage of the people who live in our community are facing financial hardships. So, you know, there were a number of things that I think in a normal year I would have proposed as potential additions to the budget. A lot of them were nice to haves, not have to haves, in light of the fact that cuts have obviously had to be made to make sure that we can maintain those promises and maintain our tax rate. I don't intend to do that today. Unless no one else claims the $70,000, then I'll grab it. But, you know, and I've had conversations with some of my colleagues about this. I don't know how much room there is for adjustment and where any additional money could be garnered from for these efforts. But I do think that with all of what's been going on, and with obviously the behavioral changes that this last 2 months has caused in many of us as residents of the city, I do think that there's an opportunity, and I'm sure the Mayor Pro Tem will speak to this to some degree as well, I do think there's an opportunity to be even more mindful and even more aggressive on things like walkability, bikeability, open space. I think that we've seen people, I just actually bought a new bike for myself this weekend, and every bike shop and bike person that I talked to said this is like Christmas time for them. They've never seen sales in May that came anywhere close to this. People want to be back outside, and I think that they're even more appreciative now than ever of things like protected bike lanes, wider sidewalks. You know, when people are out walking their dogs now and having to make sure that they're giving each other the proper amount of social distance as they pass each other in the streets, all of a sudden a 4-foot sidewalk is a lot more problematic than maybe we used to realize. So, you know, I don't know. I do think that has been one of our top priorities. Maybe now more than ever should be one of our top priorities: walkability, bikeability, alternative modes of transportation. And again, if there are ways that we can look through the budget and come back a week from now and say, well, we could could be more aggressive on that front, and here are the 3 or 4 places we'd have to pull those dollars from. Undoubtedly, those dollars would be pulled from something else that is important, but I think it would allow council the opportunity to rank their priorities. So I think that that's something that I'd like to see considered. One of the other things I had hoped to include in this budget, and maybe we'll look down the road to next year's budget or thereafter if I am involved in more budgets beyond that, I'd like to see the city placing a higher priority on historic preservation. I'd like to see the city investing in our Historic Landmarks Commission's revolving fund, even if it's not a great amount, but even $50, $100, $200,000 a year, I think symbolically would demonstrate that it's something that's a priority of the city, and it's a place you can put money that revolves. They get a lot of that money back as they invest in these properties and are able to sell them. I'm certainly going to understand if that's not something I'm able to achieve this year. I think that maintaining the tax rate where it is and make sure that we're delivering on our promises is of greater importance than trying to add new bells and whistles to this budget. But I'll mention that now, again, in case no one else claims that $70,000 that's there, or just as something that we can be thinking about for next year. But I'll cede the rest of my time and save it for rebuttal later.
Okay. I just want to note that Mr. Eggleston knew about the $70,000, and he knew what his numbers were specifically for historic preservation. So going to District 2, Mr. Graham, are you able to talk? I don't know if you have hands free, but we can come back to you if we need to.
Well, if you could come back to me, and I would yield to Renee if she's ready, but I can speak now if you want me to.
Well, it's up to you. You tell me if you want to start, if I can go to Victoria next and then come back to you.
That'll be fine. Thank you.
Right. All right. So, Ms. Watlington, you have out of after $65,000 to deal with, because I'm sure you want to do historic preservation, as Mr. Larkin suggested. Ms. Watlington.
I am very, very pleased. I've said it a couple times. I don't have any adjustments to the budget at this time. I'm ready to get to work, and I'm excited about what we were able to do. And kudos to staff, kudos to the manager being able to figure out how to continue our priorities in these uncertain times. So looking forward to getting to work, and if nobody else claims it, Larkin, I will support you.
All right. All right. So thank you, Ms. Watlington. And now we'll go to District 4. Ms. Johnson.
Okay, thank you. I also want to say how impressed it was for the city manager to be able to balance a budget in a time like this, an unprecedented time. I did have an opportunity to speak with him somewhat about the transportation infrastructure in District 4. We know that it's a very fast-growing district in the region. So the fact that we were able to get some funding for transportation infrastructure and the congestion mitigation, I'm happy with. I know that we've heard from the district and we'd like more, so I don't know that the $70,000 would be a dent in that. But if there's any way that we can look at those dollars, and I know we discussed it, and I trust the priorities of the city staff, but if there is a way to distribute that a little more equally, I know that there is a need in our district. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. I hope all is well for the rest of the day and the upcoming days.
Thanks. Thank you.
All right. So why don't we go to District 5, Mr. Newton?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I like the budget as well. I think to have it be structurally balanced given the circumstances is extraordinary. So I want to thank the staff for your hard work on this. Thank the manager as well. I do have a couple of concerns. So I don't know, with us eliminating some of the open jobs within the city, if those were needed or necessary jobs that might come back a little bit later on down the road. But I I do understand and appreciate the necessity of doing so. So I'm on board with that. I wanted to ask about so I had a conversation with you, Mr. Manager, and with our finance director regarding our debt service. And I don't know if we got an answer or if I received an answer for that in the paperwork or the Q&A that was released to us on Monday. Am I recalling right that we were looking at switching? So I don't know if this was in our PAYGO fund or coming out of our CIP, but debt service in the amount of about $1.8 million. Was that right?
So I think I know where you're going with this, Mr. Newton. So there were a couple things that we did in this 2021 budget that brought more resources to the general fund, and a couple of those had an impact on the debt service fund. So as I mentioned earlier, nothing impacts the 2020 bond. Your next bond would be 2022, which is FY 2023. And our steady state, which changes, but our steady state today is about $223 million. That includes both what we call COPS and bonds. So your steady state going into FY 2023 would be reduced to about $208 million. I think that's about a $15 million change, and I don't see Kelly saying anything yet. And that's for every 2 years. And what I would say to you, again, we're a few years away from that period in time, but there are more assumptions that go into the debt model that could potentially make that better, hopefully not worse, by the time we get to the 2022 bond. So all the actions taken together brings the steady state down to about $208 million.
And the reason why I ask is so we're talking about debt service that could create about $20 million plus for future council and their plans, sidewalks, transit, micro grants, neighborhood grants, etc. And so I just want to ask, I mean, by taking that out and using that, are we in any way, shape, or form hamstringing a future council and their priorities using that today? Is that something that's going to take away from a council in 2024, 2020, 2025 to do what they want to do?
Yeah, that's, again, a good question. And I hate it when someone says that's a yes and no. So today, you could say that does limit what you have in terms of capacity. But that's also making some assumptions about where we are with sales tax today and what we're doing in terms of interest, as well as the money that goes out, which we call the draw schedule. And I would suggest that there's so many additional variables that are associated with it that it's tough to say that when you get to that point in time that you wouldn't be back at 223 or you wouldn't be at 230.
Sure. I want to do everything in my power to make sure that we aren't limiting the ability of future councils to do their jobs. I think that 70,000 going towards something like that is probably a drop in the bucket. I want to just remind everyone that we do have an additional unrestricted fund that I think even 1.8 million out of would be in and of itself a drop in the bucket, probably about 1% of that fund. That would be our reserve fund. I think it's something that was created specifically for a purpose like this, where we experience shortcomings or shortfalls within our budget due to a crisis. And in this circumstance, of course, probably the greatest crisis in the history of Charlotte, the coronavirus crisis. So just want to remind everyone of that. And I would say let's look at that maybe a little more thoroughly. I don't know what an action item on that would be. So am I right in us talking about that debt service being 1.8 million? Was that right? Am I remembering that correctly, or am I wrong on that? Was it larger than that? Smaller?
I know. So what's happening is you are taking what I believe is the ABC money, the 25% that used to go to the debt service fund, that now is moving that 25% so that 100% is in the general fund, much like other cities. And Kelly, I think that's where he's talking about the equivalency of that is 1.8 million.
Yeah, I think when we think about the steady state and going forward, the impact from the ABC is really nominal, if not immaterial. I think when we're looking at the model, we're being super conservative, and we're looking at investment earning assumptions, investment rate assumptions, as well as sales tax collection assumptions, and I think those are the big drivers. So as it relates to the move of the ABC, it's about 4.5 million of the 15 million in impact, but in the long run doesn't really change the model.
Would I be paraphrasing correctly? So what I think I'm hearing is that what you're saying is we can make that up. Is that what I'm hearing?
I mean, if I knew that, I wouldn't be sitting here, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's a safe assumption. There's some things we didn't look at in the model because we're trying to be super conservative. So things like construction costs that typically in a recession would go down, we didn't factor that in. We're just trying to be super conservative. So I think the 208 is really your floor.
Mm-hmm. So for me in District 5, Silver Line, much like District 1 and then out towards the west side as well, Silver Line is so very important. And I want to make sure that we don't find ourselves in a position where we're cutting aspects of that, things like the rail trail, for example. So anyhow, assuming that that's not on the table here, which I think what I'm hearing is it isn't, I am very happy about this budget, very happy about the fact that we're talking about it being structurally balanced, as you were saying, Mr. Manager, there being no tax increase here, and there being no water fee increase as well, which I think is significant. So thank you so much. That's all I have right now. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so District 6.
Yes, thank you.
Hi, Mr. Bakari.
Hi, good day. Good day. So I just start by saying great work to Marcus Jones, the city manager, to staff, to everyone who's obviously worked under tough circumstances to pull together what you might almost want to think of as a minor miracle. And I think it's important to recognize the backdrop that we're looking at this budget. And we heard it last time we all met. March, food and bev taxes down 56%, occupancy tax down 70%, vehicle rentals down 97%. The sales tax forecast, as he placed this budget in front of us, was down over $11 million. We are in uncharted territory, and I think it's important for us to remember that, and to remember the fact that we've been presented a budget that might have almost seemed too good to be true when we saw it. No tax increase, no layoffs or furloughs, no dipping into the reserve, no increase in CATS fares, and very important to me and many of us I know, keeping our commitment to police and fire on this multi-year journey that we've been on with them. So the ability to do that and really just eliminating vacant positions and really tightening belts, I think is important to recognize, alongside of saying there are some strategic items in here, like congestion mitigation, desperately needed in South Charlotte and other places, corridors, and the focus they're going to get. So I think those are all the really amazing good news stories, but it's also important, as we heard him say, there are implications in the long term that we have to keep our eye on. That reduction in the capacity in PAYGO and debt and things of that nature, we're making some assumptions here that things are going to, at some relatively reasonable point, get better. And if they don't, I think that's the mark of saying we've been able to squeeze every kind of drop out of this lemon right now. But things have to get better at some point in order for us not to be in very, very bad shape. So what I'll say first is kudos, a job well done. But I'll also say I'm scared right now. We've all been working really hard and we're in the weeds of all this, but I don't know what's coming and what new problems are going to be there. What new challenges are our first responders going to be facing that will require us to change our model, which will cost money? small business and workforce, the lifeblood, the gasoline to the engine that has stalled right now, they're going to need things in different ways that not only impact our incoming revenues in the form of taxes, but also they will require support from us. We heard today in our committee from Sarah Balcom, one of our small business task force members, who is a co-founder of Girl Tribe with 6 employees. Their foot traffic is down 80% right now. And I mean, it's just like, if you think about that as the underlying micro to the macro picture we're looking at right now, I don't think we know what's coming. And all that is going to cost money and require strategies. And then the things that Councilman Winston and I and many others have been looking at for a while, the digital divide, upward mobility, those things, like, they're not going to get better. In fact, they're getting worse. They're going to get worse as this economic future is kind of embarked upon and where we're heading. So I say all of those as examples of this is a good budget that tightens all the right areas, but it's not too good to be true. We've made sacrifices in the long term that require things to get better. But we are going to be in a position over the next year, I believe, that we're going to have to reimagine what we call core services today. And that's not just going to require us to be nimble and reactive to new pieces of data and information as they come up. It's going to take money. And that money is going to potentially be getting smaller and smaller. So now is not the normal time in budget cycles for us to say, well, there's an extra little pot of money here, let's do that here. We need to keep this mindset strong going forward so that we're able to react to whatever the new normal is coming up. So again, I don't mean to dampen any thoughts out there. I just want to say it's a great job, but it's a first step in a marathon of steps that we're embarking on. And I appreciate all the work that's gone into that first step. But I think if we keep that mindset, we'll do as best as we can be expected to do. So thank you.
All right. Mr. Driggs. Mr. Driggs? Unmute. I can't hear Mr. Driggs. I can't hear. Mr. Driggs?
Better?
There. We're here. Good. Okay.
How's that?
That's great. Thank you.
All right, I just wanted to join everybody else in congratulating the manager and staff on the solutions they've found to the challenges that we face. I think as budget chair, I would particularly like to note the presentation of the budget is also exceptional. I don't know how many budget nerds there are out there, but I can tell you that the layout of this budget and the transparency of the budget is exceptional. So Kelly, Ryan, manager, everybody who was involved, it's a beautiful book. I will also mention, I think Councilmember Bakari is what's that?
We're tearing up.
Yeah, good. And I'd also like to point out that I believe Councilmember Bakari is right to be wary, and we are all in a mode where we need to be cautious. But I would like to highlight also the fact that we have the benefit of starting from a position of exceptional financial strength. And compared to many communities, the position that we were in when this crisis started was unusual. So we have a AAA debt rating. We have a 16% fund balance, which is not being invaded in order to achieve this balanced budget. No tax increase, as has been noted. I'm particularly pleased to note also the funds for District 7 that are in this budget, near and dear to my heart. So we will see some congestion relief there. We'll see some ongoing capital investment in projects like Bryant Farms Road. We will also see capital investment, I'm very hopeful, through the Ballantine project. So when you're in that position, your ability to withstand some of those things that could happen in the future is improved. We still have remedies that are available to us that would leave us in a better position than most municipalities still. Mr. Manager, I think you probably talked about this, but I thought it would be useful if you could just quickly go over a couple of items in the budget. There's an increase in legal expenses of 45%, in technology of 38%, and I know that there's a story there. I wonder if you could just remind us what that is in case people kind of pick up on that. And then I also wanted to talk about the planning budget.
Yes, so thank you, Mr. Driggs. So we started off 2 years ago with what we would call consolidation, but it was really for some of those departments that provide services to other departments like communications, HR, and IT. We started to, instead of having a bunch of individuals out in the departments decentralized, we thought that there would be some opportunities for efficiencies as well as savings by centralizing. And so we've done that with HR, communications, and more recently IT. So let's talk about the two that you mentioned. From the legal perspective, what we have, there were certain attorneys that were dedicated to departments, the most of them in the police department. And those attorneys showed up in the police's budget. Now Patrick has all of those attorneys reporting to him, and that's why you see the big increase. In terms of IT, it's the latest in terms of this decentralization of certain functions where departments provide services to other departments. And there's been a lot of kudos today to the staff, especially the budget staff, the finance staff. I also want to give kudos to the departments that were willing to trust having the asset that was in their department being moved more centrally. So believe it or not, we had police and fire give up IT positions so that they could be centralized. So when you see those big jump ups, increases in IT and in legal, it is because where individuals were being charged to departments, they're now being charged centrally to those departments. Not new people coming in, but being moved from departments under one umbrella. And to the point that Mr. Bakari made earlier, there are going to be some opportunities in the future as positions become open, that there are going to be some efficiencies because we have centralized some of these functions.
Right. So my challenge to council members is to find all the places in the budget where there are reductions in expenses that have actually moved to these new cost centers, legal and technology. I also wanted to mention, I've had a conversation with the Mayor Pro Tem about planning, and I'm going to let her talk about that. I'm sure she will explain. I just wanted you to know that I share some of those concerns. And so I hope that as she talks about that, we will find a way to be responsive to some of the issues she raises. I would mention also the CIP right now is kind of a big empty space. And I hope that in the course of the budget year and not waiting until next year, we will have an ongoing process of identifying capital projects and trying to start penciling in so that we have a little more visibility on the future, because right now we fall off a cliff essentially in the way this is presented. So I view that as just an ongoing process. And brief comment, if we have $70,000, I don't think we need in this meeting to look around for ways to spend it. I think there are probably going to be plenty of creative ways that we can spend that if we have the option of just keeping it. And having it available for council actions in the future that might require amounts like that. And Mr. Manager, thank you again. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Driggs. I also wanted to say in that consolidation, I believe when we had the new city attorney, when Mr. Baker came on board, we asked for that centralization. So I know that it's one thing that's helping us as we begin to look at our processes and interactions with the city attorney's office, that it's helpful that we've put those groups together. So, Mr. Graham, we can't hear Mr. Graham.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being patient with me. It's been a really, really crazy day. But I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad that my day started with a very good news that we have a new police chief that's been appointed come later this fall, and Deputy Chief Jennings. That was a very great way to start today. I think he's going to do a really good job for us in our community. So I want to thank the manager and the mayor for that fast action in his appointment. I think he's going to do a great job for our community. Mr. Manager, as I told you before, I tried really, really hard to find something wrong with this budget. I really did, given the circumstances that we're working under. And just like my colleague has communicated, based on where we are as a community at this point in time, I think the budget is a very good budget. Every council member brings expertise to the table, so when I have budget questions, I tend to listen to Councilmember Driggs, and if he can't find anything wrong with it, certainly I can't. And so I just want to echo the sentiments from my colleagues in terms of the thoughtfulness of the budget. It's a great credit not only to this council, but previous councils who have the discipline to make sure that we're financially stable as a community, as an organization, that 16% fund balance is there, and that this budget represents no tax increase. Those things have been said before, but I think they are worth mentioning yet again. And so, again, I want to thank you and the staff for your attention to details and understanding the moment that we are in, and I think the budget reflects that. A couple of things I do want to highlight that's in the budget that I think is worth noting, not only for the residents of District 2, but also throughout the city, those who live among fragile and threatened corridors is a term that we used to use, but I think it still applies today, that the budget really puts a shot in the arm to how we address quarter and quarter revitalization in neighborhoods, and something that I'm really, really excited about, that those dollars are in place really to drive the mission of this council in terms of how do we better revitalize our communities and our neighborhoods. So I'm really excited about those. I'm also hopeful, Mr. Manager, that the dollars that we put in the budget will match the energy coming from the staff to execute in a way that maximize those dollars to small businesses and really getting in those corridors and kind of doing some of the grunt work necessary for those investments to pay dividends for the community. So I'm really excited about that and willing to work with you and your staff to make that happen. Obviously, aging in place is a part of that. How do we work along fragile and threatened corridors like Bays Ford Road and the South Street is really important. Having the city be an investor in projects that make sense is important to me as well. And so I'm excited about that and excited about all the things that are happening within the CIP that are coming to a conclusion that were part of previous budgets before. So I think we're in good shape. I did highlight, though, transportation and transit as a point of consideration going forward. Clearly, I think, I understand where we are as a community, but I do think that hopefully when we get beyond COVID-19 and we really get a handle on our budget forecasting in terms of what the future holds for us, that we really could really roll up our sleeves and see what we can do creatively along moving transit along a little bit further financially and being a little bit more aggressive in terms of how we begin to solve some of these issues and problems. But nonetheless, Mr. Manager, Ms. Mayor, I think the budget reflects where we are as a community. I really don't have any comments other than the ones that I've made, and I just look forward to working with the staff and you, Madam Mayor, to execute the budget as we move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Ms. Ajmera?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also share my colleagues' thoughts around financially strong position that we are, and kudos to our city staff, especially our city manager, for proposing very solid budget that aligns with our community goals and the needs that we have heard from residents without any tax increase. So thanks to city manager. I'm certainly very excited to see that we are furthering our overall planning and also the CF goals in this budget, considering the times that we are in now. So thanks to our city manager for that. I was going through the questionnaire that was sent to us a couple of days ago, and I had asked about all the positions that's been eliminated. And then one that particularly stood out for me was the city treasurer's role that provides oversight for our debt management, cash, and investment functions, and that's a very critical role. So question to you, city manager, who is currently providing or how those responsibilities have been divided among existing team members?
So thank you, Ms. Hashmira. We are very fortunate here in Charlotte that our CFO, Kelly Flannery, has such a depth of knowledge in that area. So she is taking on the responsibility, I guess her title is Chief Financial Officer / City Treasurer. So we're just happen to be in a good place that is a part of her expertise.
Great. And is this a temporary elimination of this position, or will this, once the pandemic is over and we are seeing our funding or our revenues going back up, would that position be filled again at some point?
Well, as long as we have Kelly in the position, we don't see at all bringing back that position, because once again, she's able to cover both and do it very well.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Other question I have is around allocation to our pension liabilities. I know we had one speaker who serves on the board and talked about our obligation, especially to our retirees, and how our liabilities were, what has been our funding in the past percentage-wise, and what has been the funding this year, and if there is a possibility to increase that funding from the access that we have.
Sure. So I'll take the first shot at this. This is clearly in Ryan's wheelhouse. So we have. He was talking about the firefighter retirement system, which is the city operates that system, and we have by statute what we are supposed to contribute. I have been in communication with that board with a commitment to do more than what is statutorily required because we're seeing that decrease in the funding level. And I believe we had at 1.4%, 1.35% more than what we were required to add, and that's a part of the proposed budget.
Thank you. I know that we are funding more, 1.35% more than what is statutorily required, but what are we currently at in terms of the funding levels? Is it at 70%, 60%, 80%? How are we funded currently?
So our current funded status is 82.7%. Moody's had a report recently on public pension systems, which put the average around 73%. So it's, I don't think it's in dire straits, but as the manager mentioned, for more than 20 years, we've had this system where the city contributes 12.65% and the employee contributes 12.65%. I think there's been recognition over the last couple of years that's not going to be sustainable. So the manager's office and the budget office and finance have been working with the system on a long-term strategy. So I think at some point in the summer or the fall, they'll want to present in front of the budget committee, presumably, to talk about that. But As the manager said, we're contributing more than we're required. We're contributing the amount that they formally asked the city manager, and there's a recognition that this is really a step one in a long-term process.
Thank you, Ryan. Certainly, we are in a stronger position, without a doubt, when it comes to our liabilities and addressing those, because we are funding it at a higher percentage than what is statutorily required. But what I'm concerned about is that, as you, Ryan, just stated, that the sustainability of this would be a concern if we are not going to be continuing to fund at 12 point some percentage matched by employees. So I would like us to have any access fund those liabilities, because we have seen across the nation where how many cities have not been able to meet their obligations when it comes to retirees. I know we are far, far away from that, but if we have any access, I think we should go ahead and fund it so that we can meet our obligations in the future, because we do not know how economy will recover, whether we will have any access in the future to fund at a higher percentage. Yes, we have been blessed this year where we funded at 1.35% more than what was required, but I don't know what that looks like in 2021, 2022, and onwards. So I would highly suggest that we fund any access that we have into that, even though it will just be a drop in the ocean. But that's how retirement accounts get funded. Also, I agree with concerns, or I agree with what my colleague, Councilmember Eggleston, had mentioned about bike lanes and funding that. I'm not much of a biker, but I have seen, even in our neighborhoods, where we are seeing, especially in this pandemic, folks are using bikes more, they're walking more, and there is a greater need for bike lanes. And just overall, how that helps tackle mobility and access. So I would also like us to consider funding our bike plan, and I'm in full support of funding that. So with that, that's all I have. But again, thank you, staff and Mr. Manager, for doing a great job with our budget. Certainly, it's very impressive.
Thank you, Ms. Hashmira. Mr. Winston?
Yes. Again, congratulations to the manager for seemingly getting unanimous praise on the most important piece of policy that we vote on all year. I'll be quick. There are three things. If we have the opportunity to, love to see other types of investment in a commitment to bridging the digital divide. Any kind of extra money, quote unquote extra money, as my colleagues have said, there's really no such thing as extra. But if we can put to standing up a process that aims to bridge the digital divide in all of Charlotte. With that said, it's something that I've been working on a lot. Ideas like this, but everything that we do, we've talked about it a lot over the past 3 years that I've been on council, operating as a region. I think in order to really do that, we as elected officials have to have more engagement with other elected officials, and there have to be a process and a way to get that done. So if there is any money that can go into a bucket that council members can use, specifically kind of aimed at other elected officials in the region. For instance, if we're going to do the digital divide, we have to engage with other policymakers in our surrounding rural communities to figure out how to get our priorities aligned. And it is not good enough just for different staff members between those different entities to work together. It has to be on the elected level, and it shouldn't be just up to us as individuals to figure out how to get that done. The third thing I would like to see, if at all possible, is Election Day support. It's something I think I've spoken to you, Mr. Jones, about in terms of is this something that we can have to deal with in budget time, one, either within our organization to give Election Day off and encourage all of our employees to go out and vote, or do we have the ability to do something like mail out absentee ballot request forms to all of our city residents to increase the civic engagement of our city. So that's my three things. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winston. Mr. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to echo a lot of comments my colleague made. City manager and staff, great job. Just want to highlight a couple of things that always stand out during this budget time conversation. One is no property tax increase, no layoffs. Thank you for continuing to support our public safety employees. Particularly, I'm excited about the $24.5 million to our corridor, and we started a new rebranding process. We call them opportunity corridors. I think that sends a strong message to our citizens who live in our corridors, what they mean to the city, and then maintaining the funding level for all our existing financial partners. Two of them stand out with me that I have a lot of passion for: my Brothers Keepers program, as well as the Women Business Center of Charlotte. So kudos, sir. Great job to you and your staff.
All right. Mayor Pro Tem? Mayor Pro Tem? We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Now, yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I join my 10 other colleagues in saying thank you, Mr. Manager, and to the Budgets Department and all of the department heads that really worked hard on this budget. It was sort of a big collective exhale when you presented it to us, to know that we were in great shape and relatively good shape compared to what a lot of other large cities across the country are. So I appreciate that very much. I, too, want to thank you for keeping the money in there for our bike lanes. And as Ms. Ajmera said, and I think Mr. Eggleston said, we are seeing a lot more use of that. And when you walk in the streets now, you realize how much of our street infrastructure is dedicated to cars that are parked, whereas people want to use them now to walk on and use their bikes and scooters and whatnot. So thank you for that. I also appreciate the corridor investments, and that kind of leads to the one thing that I am asking that we take a look at in the budget, and that is the UDO and the Comprehensive Vision Plan. So for the council members that have been around for a little bit, we know that the UDO was paused before Taiwoba was hired because we started talking about the need to have a comprehensive vision plan, which is essentially the blueprint that would then lay out what the UDO, what the policies should be to fulfill the vision that the plan, the comprehensive vision plan, lays out. I think it's even more important that we accelerate that process now, and I saw that we had about a $600,000 cut to the planning department, in a large part because of projected revenues for permitting fees and other fees. But I think that as we really think about the promise that we made to our community to build a more equitable city where people have more access to opportunity, more access to affordable homes and to good public transportation, the only way we can do that is through a master plan. And if we, are around long enough to be able to look back on this period in time, I'd like to be able to say this is the good that came out of this pandemic. And there's precedence for that. Central Park, I learned, was built because of the malaria outbreak. when they recognized a need for more people to have access to fresh air. So was the Champs-Élysées in Paris, the open streets in Barcelona were all developed when they realized that more people needed access to healthy environments. So I would ask that we take a look at that and see what we can do to move the comprehensive vision plan along and move it. I know we can't catch up for lost time, but I think some of the cuts came to our consultants, and I just am really worried about the fact that it's very possible that what's going to happen with this pandemic is that our economic segregation and the economic disparities in this community will be more pronounced. And one of the ways that we as a city can address that is through the comprehensive vision plan and the UDO. So that I hope some of my colleagues will support me on that, and I thank you for giving that some consideration, and for otherwise a really solid budget. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we have gone through a complete round. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to discuss or state before we go to? Yes, Mr. Eggleston. Yes.
Well, since nobody else made a direct claim for it, I would, and I do think that this is something too where many folks would be inclined, myself included, to find a project for their district. But I do think that what I mentioned earlier, if the funds are there for us to put something in this budget, I think that this is a district neutral proposal because historic preservation is done throughout our community. I think it's something that spurs a lot of private investment. Just look, you don't have to look any further than Camp North End, Optimist Hall, a lot of the things that have happened around our city in the last couple of years in the name of historic preservation to see the investment it spurs in the areas around it, the improved infrastructure that is done through private dollars around it. I think that it is a small investment with a large return that benefits all parts of our city. So I will formally propose that we utilize the additional dollars that though minimal, I think would be impactful in the Historic Landmarks Revolving Fund. If I've got 4 colleagues that are willing to support that and move it forward.
Tell me how much money we are beyond, is it $70,000?
71.
We'll call it 70 for a round number.
Yeah.
$71,000 is a round number 2, right?
Hold on to the extra 1,000.
Okay. But I think I heard some threads of something, maybe not direct. So let me say that Mr. Eggleston has put the first realistic. Can you give me an amount, Mr. Eggleston?
$70,000 for the Charlotte Mecklenburg Historic Landmarks Commission's revolving fund.
And what that means is if we can get 5 votes to support that, the staff will come back and talk about that. But I also thought I heard Mayor Pro Tem say put money back into the UDO Vision Plan consultants. But I want to make sure. So is there any other more direct requests? I think we've all talked about something, but I want to make sure we captured any direct requests so that we have that. So raise your hand.
I have 3 things.
Wait a minute, I have Ms. Watlington first, and then Mr. Winston to follow.
Yeah, I was just going to ask a process question. I agree with Mayor Pro Tem. I'd love to see more transportation dollars, more planning dollars as it relates to the UDO, but wasn't sure exactly what the next step was to support that. And like I said, happy to support the historic preservation piece as well.
So, but at this time, I'd like you to say specifically if you'd like a project and money that the staff would develop a response to how it could be accomplished. So I saw the Mayor Pro Tem after Mr. Winston. Mr. Winston, I got Mr. Mitchell followed, okay?
Yes, so I don't know how much all of these things would cost, but I would like to consider, actually I said 4 things. For Election Day support, making it a holiday for our employees, a paid holiday for our employees, finding out to mail application for absentee ballot to everybody in the city, how much that would cost. putting money behind a commitment to bridging the digital divide, and an intergovernmental fund to help council members engage other elected officials around the state and region.
So we have $70,000. Would you have a preference around any one of those in a priority order? We can go through them as a vote at the end, but if you'll just tell me where. I know that the cost of a day off for employees.
Yeah, I know that's more than $70,000.
Yeah.
We go through the 12 months, thinking high level and giving ideas and guiding the staff on how to make those things work. So if within the money that is left over, if we can do something that speaks that makes sense to stand those up, I'd love that feedback from staff.
Okay, I understand that, but I think for the vote going forward, is there a priority you want to ask your colleagues to support that's what I'm asking for. Is there 1, 2, 3, and 4?
Okay, I got you.
Matter?
Digital divide would be number 1.
Okay.
Digital divide would be number 1. Engage election day support would be 2, and engagement of regional elected leaders would be.
Thank you.
Third.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I would like my colleagues to consider the addition back into the budget of $500,000 for planning for the UDO, which is includes the consultant, the legal reviews, the economic analysis, and the other budget items that were in there, communications and marketing. And again, that would have to be refined by Mr. Jaiwoba, but my understanding is that's the number that came out that we would really need if we wanted to get the UDO back on track.
So when we get beyond $70,000, is there something you'd like to cut to get there?
Well, I probably would.
I mean, we've got the $70,000. I just want just think about it and get back to me, okay? We'll come back around on that. All right, Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mayor. If we can have the city manager to come back about adding 5.9 to the CIP for transportation roads to the Brook Hill Affordable Housing Project.
5.9 million?
Yes.
To the CIP for Brook Hill?
For the transportation road infrastructure, yes, Mayor.
For the road infrastructure?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Ms. Ajmera?
Thank you. So this question is for Ryan. Could you tell us what was the amount that we had, actual amount, not the percentage that we had put in this year's budget towards our firefighters pension plan?
Each percent is worth about $800,000. So it would be about 11.2 million.
11.2 million.
Thank you. I'm good.
Okay. Mr. Graham?
Mayor, I just wanted to support Councilmember Eggleston's request, Larkin's request.
Mr. Eggleston's request. Mr. Mitchell, can I come back to you and talk about the 5.9 million? That would be in next year's capital budget or going forward. I don't know where we are with that, but it's considerable. And how would you see that? Because that would have to be bond funding, I guess?
And so, Mayor, I would like for the city manager, he could bring all those options back to us and then let council have those conversations, and in light of whether that project eventually gets funded, but at least let us have the conversation of how we can at least provide the infrastructure to Brook Hill.
For this budget or for discussion at some point when the financial analysis comes back?
When the financial analysis come back from the city manager.
Okay, okay. Okay, that helps. All right, Ms. Johnson?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Ms. Johnson?
Thank you. I know I made reference to transportation improvement for the $70,000, but I just want to ask if we can hold off making any decisions until the task force makes recommendations regarding the COVID needs. There are still many gaps in the community. We still have individuals in food lines and, you know, there's rent assistance. So I know recommendations haven't been made, but can we hold off on the macro issues? Because there are still residents who have not received unemployment and stimulus, and there are just people that are really hurting. We're on a Zoom call because of a pandemic. So I would just, if we can take a step back to keep that in the forefront, if there's any extra dollars, there's needs in the community.
Okay. We'll start off with that as for the first 5, because if you decide that, then we'll go from there. Okay, so I think that I have the following list of things, but I want the staff. Can you put it now up on? Marie's going to put it up on the screen, everyone. What we heard.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Ms. Watlington, was that you?
Yeah, that's me. I just want to be clear. Councilmember Mitchell brought up the funding for Brook Hill, should that project go forward. And you asked a couple of questions. And so as I think about what we're about to do here and how that plays into this, is the thought that that money would show up later on in a bond cycle? Tell me, if you could just explain a little bit more about why you said what you said and what are the implications if the money doesn't go into here today?
Well, the reason that I said that is that, one, we asked the staff to work with the developer to come back with how this project might be funded and how it looks. So he requested in his funding for the housing project to be the $5.9 million or whatever it was. And so that's one option. The other option would be if we had to pay for that, where would that 5.9, which is generally any major road construction project like that, would be a capital project that would have to be done. So I was assuming that what Mr. Mitchell, I wanted to clarify with him, is that this conversation would come after we got information on Brook Hill, on the housing, and the idea of how we would fund the roads as a part of that review. And that would not be an add or delete to this current budget. It might be an add after this budget is adopted, but it wouldn't be right now. So does that, Mr. Mitchell, did I state that correctly for you? I want to make sure I did that correctly.
Mayor, you are good. You're spot on.
Okay, that's what I thought. So the staff has put up Mr. Eggleston's request to put $70,000 in the historic landmark fund. And then Mr. Winston asked for the digital divide, I think the election day support, and the intergovernmental. Ms. Isold asked for $500,000 for the UDO. And I think if you would put Ms. Johnson down as reserve the $70,000 until after COVID expenses and recommendations come forward. I think that's what Ms. Johnson was saying.
To bridge gaps or just emergency funding or something.
Reserve for COVID, gaps in the COVID funding of need, gaps in funding COVID needs, backwards. Okay? Ms. Isold, you want to talk about $500,000? Ms. Isold?
Okay. You know, it's hard because I could say take 50,000 out of 10 different departments, right? But I think when it boils down to it, one, it's hard to have the conversation after some decisions have been made already. I'll just be honest, if this budget had been presented to us where everybody's salaries were flat, I still think people would be, would have been appreciative of knowing that nobody was going to be laid off. So I don't know if that's even up for negotiation now that it's been proposed that everybody gets a 3% pay increase. I don't know what that amounts to. I don't remember if I looked that up or not. But, at the end of the day, it's how, what do we prioritize? And in our retreat last year, we said that mobility and better access to opportunity was our top priority. And so I don't have a specific cut, but I would hope that in a budget the size of our budget, we could make some adjustments to find $500,000, which ultimately is going to be the blueprint for what we say our biggest priority is.
So I'm going to ask the manager, if you say that that's our top priority and he's looked at all the priorities, if he'd like to address where that would come from.
So thank you, Mayor. And Mayor Pro Tem and also Mr. Driggs for, I guess, teeing it up. So there's a bit of a philosophy that we have around this budget, and I think it may apply here with the UDO, because I believe that we're on track with the comprehensive plan, but there's a question about this additional enhancement, which will delay the UDO. So we start off not looking at this as a core, but understanding service with the council members are saying. One of the things that we've done is allow department heads to have some of these positions that are vacant, and as those positions that are vacant, they may be for a certain project or program, but they have the flexibility to change those positions to the highest priority that they may have. So if we start off with, and we're trying to find Ty, if we start off with the UDO being the highest priority, there is flexibility within Ty's budget to try to bring on the resources that are needed. So I guess what I'm asking the council, if this is something that you would like for me to move forward with, I'd like to sit down with Patrick Baker, because part of it is having any type of legal assistance with it, as well as working with Ty within his budget to see that if we could come up with something that does not delay the UDO any different from where we are now.
Mr. Manager, could you appreciate that? But could you clarify when you say where we are now, because the UDO already has been delayed just by virtue of the pandemic where people can't have public meetings. So I don't know cumulatively how delayed we are from the very first point a few years ago when we started the UDO. Right. And what this $600,000 cut to the planning department means to the UDO and the comp plan.
Right. So I'll start off by saying now just means absent moving forward with these additional resources that would not become available until July 1. So my now is today. So not taking into account the delay with the UDO prior to Ty and where we are now, but a action that this body may approve that may further delay it. What I'm asking is to give us an opportunity to look within the resources that Ty has in his budget and any type of arrangement we can work out with legal to help keep us on the track that we are right now. But Ty's in the room, and I think he can better answer that.
And let me add one thing quick before. You had mentioned a cut overall to the planning department. That's actually just a result of the centralization efforts that Mr. Driggs had mentioned earlier. So that IT work will still be done. It's just an accounting thing. It'll live in IT rather than planning. So after you smooth for that, planning did actually go up about 2.7% from last year. That said, there were a few actions with positions related to user fees and things of that effect.
That's very helpful, Ryan. So, Ty,
Thank
did you hear the conversation? Or does Julie, you want to frame the question again? I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem, would you like to frame the question again now that Ty is in the room?
Sure. So of the $600,000 that was cut from the budget, and I understand the consolidation of the IT functions, but of the $600,000, Taiwo, how does that impact your ability to get the UDO back on track and to move forward vis-a-vis the expected timeline pre-COVID-19?
So
UDO and comp plan.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So on the comprehensive plan end, we are good because we got a good support from the manager, mayor, and council last year. However, because the comprehensive plan goes through adoption April or May of next year, that also pushed out the Unified Development Ordinance, but that was before we knew about COVID-19 and its impact. The request we made was pretty much to support the Unified Development Ordinance and get it to council September or October of 21. The impact to not being able to have the support will push us out about 6 to 8 months, schedule delay. If we were to get the support for the consultant and legal support independent of our legal department, we could probably do it with half of what's on the screen there, about $250,000 or so. Together with what we've been discussing with Manager Jones and Ryan as well, our budget director, I think we could get to half of this number and still be able to come out with a good document at the end. Ryan explained very clearly the cut in $600,000. It's not a cut as much as it's a result of moving some things to IT. So we've got some internal process where we can really accommodate that without any problem. It's really what we've been discussing internally, how we address the UDO. I think we will get there.
Okay, thank you, Taiwo. Then I would ask to adjust my number to $250,000.
And I want to just follow up. I think what I heard the manager and Ty say, that $250,000 would include legal, an outside legal counsel versus having the conversation with the city attorney about dedicating in-house legal counsel. So
Right.
It could be even less than that. So I
Yes.
think that can come back, it might be, but let's just see in terms of where we are. So I think everybody, we've gone through the list, and I think everybody's clear on this. I want to take a couple of minutes, if you don't mind, for me to talk a little bit about what I see. We did agree on some priorities last January, really. We talked about mobility and mobility funding. I do want to mention that we have a citizens group led by Harvey Gant, staffed by Ty, to help us really look at what we need to do to actually make mobility a high priority. And I think that that is absolutely essential to providing equity across our city. In fact, the entire group has looked at equity as one of their guiding principles for the implementation of how do we come about funding, and that is from walking, biking, transit, mass transit, trains, as well as cars. So I really feel that as we're moving forward, we are meeting the mobility with a really good group of recommendations that will come before the council. I want to say I think the council and working has, the affordable housing, I think, is finally getting to a place that we're very much all in agreement on what we're going to do. On safety, we've still got a lot to do. I have to say that when I look at what's coming up, and if we once get away from what we've been talking about as COVID-19, I think our highest reaction will be to respond to the ongoing increase in gun violence that's going on in the city. And the managers put in violence interrupters, but I certainly hope that while we are looking at this budget, that we understand that we are not really determined, or have not really determined, how we can address safety in communities that may need more of a collaborative funding approach than just having policing. And I think all of us recognize policing is not enough to make a community safe. But I think the thing that's coming up in front of us is resiliency. And I say that because we're going to need the confidence of the public if we're going to operate public services with this virus until we have a vaccine. I'm not quite sure where we're going to be, and that is a real concern of mine as we begin to address things like how do we do things, whether or not we can actually get our community to understand and have confidence in the services that we deliver. While at the same time, I think that this pandemic will require us to look at service changes. We're no different than the private sector, where we are going to have to look for more opportunities to do things in a way that puts our workforce first and making sure that we have the right equipment for them in the short term, but what services are going to be necessary for the long term as we make adjustments and see adjustments in those that are in front of us. I really hope that as a city that we'll work hard to partner with the private sector to continue workforce talent development. I know that the task force is looking at small businesses and workforce, but we're going to be just as challenged as an organization to do that. And we're going to have to respond to upward mobility. And the only way that we're going to respond to upward mobility is having it so that people can live and work in the city. They can get to work on a reasonable amount of time in a way that's cost effective for them, and that they will have jobs that pay living wages. And right now, I don't know that if you looked at our overall budget, whether or not we've met that goal and that challenge for not just our workforce, but for helping us flourish as we go forward. We've lived a long time on the shoulders of other people that have set financial policies. And our capital investments have helped our city become what it is. But we, I think, are in a position where we're going to have to equalize the capital investments with our human investments if we're actually going to continue to be the city that people look at to say they'll come out of this ahead of anyone else. You know, we say that we have a flat tax rate. We will have a revaluation in 2 or 3 years. Is the next reval in 3 years? That is, again, something that we all have to begin to think about. If we're going to be resilient, I think that most of our time as an elected group, and I've asked the manager to schedule a retreat, and he talked about October, it really has to focus on what we can do to contain costs and still provide services and still support the businesses and the workers in the city, because without them, we don't succeed. And that's really important. So I think our biggest challenge is going forward. It's not just today, and it's not just the things that we're doing that are on the list right now, but I believe we all need to be thinking about something in October that begins to deal with mobility, safety, resiliency, and housing. Without those things, looking at our own ability, I don't know that we can continue to be the city that we want to be and that we are right now. So it's time for a major shift, and this budget leaves us in a position, I think, to be able to have that shift and go forward. So with that, we can go back to the list. But as we're making this list and thinking about what's really going to help us, I hope that people will consider that. Resiliency is just as important. Safety, mobility, and housing, all of those are important factors in this discussion. So with that, 5 votes. Everybody understands the guidelines. We will start with Mr. Eggleston. And Donata, I can do a roll call, but I just really need, if you can put your hands up, and this is an informal vote, then Donata can read them out and the clerk can record them. Do you have?
Mayor.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry.
Can you add one more for me? I'd like to put one out there that says reduce taxes by exactly $70,000.
No, I'm not going to do that, Tark.
Oh, you know. Oh, that's a little request.
I understand. I think that's what Ms. Johnson, no. I understand what you're saying, and it makes a good point. Thank you for making that point. Okay.
Ms. Johnson, what?
No, I was just...
You voted in affirmative for that.
Thank you, Tark. I appreciate that. Okay, the list stays the same. I'm going to start out with Mr. Eggleston's, and Donata's going to tell us who has their hands up, and that would mean 5 hands up on Mr. Eggleston's suggesting to put $70,000 in Historic Preservation Commission's Landmark Fund. Any hands up?
Mr. Graham? Mr. Eggleston?
You're looking for the raised hand electronically. People are actually raising their hands.
I apologize, guys.
Oh, okay.
So we got the grid up
can
on
we
the
go
screen.
to the screen?
We can you take down?
I'm sorry. Can I please ask another process question? I apologize.
No, you don't have to apologize for asking a question, because if you've got that question, I bet there are a few others that have it as well. Ms. Watlington.
Don't worry about it. I'll look.
I just want to make sure I only get one vote on here. So if
You
I
get
choose
one
this-
vote for each item.
I'll just look.
You get to, you could raise your hands 5 times. Of course, that doesn't make it work very well, but you can vote each time. Everyone has one vote for each item.
Madam Mayor?
Yes?
Madam Mayor? How do we vote on an item that doesn't have the funding next to it, though? What are we voting on?
I don't
Like on
know. I've
Braxton's-
asked that question, but we don't have any funding, and Mr. Winston has not suggested funding. He suggested a priority. But Mr. Winston, would you like to do this, dividing it up? I mean, for $70,000 or $500,000, $250,000? What's your choice?
Yeah, I'm always a little confused by this because again, every other process that we do, we give our priorities to staff for them to figure out how for them to come back to us, because again, we don't our role is not to micromanage to that point. We give an idea and we ask them how do we make that work within our budgetary constraints. So I just don't know how this is any different. I'm not totally sure how the $70,000 for historic preservation landmark fund will be used, but I do agree that if we can bolster that up, we should do it. Just like Ms. Eisel's plan. Really don't know how that $250,000 was put together, but trust that staff will figure out how to get those things done. So
if you actually want an answer on mine, I'll give it. But I don't.
Well, I know, but Mr. Winston, I think that generally what we've done is we've asked people if they want to add something, that they actually identify something in the budget, because you have a recommended budget. If that's the case, if we're not micromanaging, we wouldn't put anything up because we have a balanced budget that the manager has taken the insight over the last 12 months to put together. So it's kind of like you're putting him in a position of not knowing how far, how much you're willing to go to do this. And it's just a conceptual thing. Is it $100,000 to address the digital divide? I expected if we really wanted to address the digital divide, it would probably be more than $100,000. But are you
sure? That's exactly what I'm saying. It could be more than $100,000, or we could staff could come up with a $15,000 initiative to really push something forward. So that's what I'm saying.
Okay, so you can leave it up to the council member to whether or not to support it as it's defined or not. I think that the money, if you knew what you were asking for, might help better define, but it's just really up there to all of the council. You can decide yes or no on it. So I think that Mr. Winston's right. He doesn't have to have a number, but I think the question is, the manager will come back and maybe just say, here's what we have available and here's how I would recommend it, but I don't think you are required to have a number. I think you just have to have 5 votes to move it forward. Okay?
Yeah.
So again, moving it forward means
the manager takes it and gives it. See, he responds to the request for what you're doing and makes a better definition for it with an amount of money, and then it comes back to us on next Wednesday. Okay. That would be the final vote.
Okay.
Is everybody on the same page? Help me. If I didn't describe that accurately, please let me know.
Yes, that's the understanding that I was operating on. That's absolutely true.
It's helpful to have a number, but it's not required.
Okay.
Okay. So can we go to the screen?
So for you to be able to see this screen, I'll do the work. I'll toggle through the top and I'll be fine. So if they can physically keep their hands up for a couple seconds while I toggle through the screens.
All right, so let's go back to the first one, Historic Landmarks Commission. If you raise your hand on screen, Donat is going to be able to go through it and list out the names of the folks that have supported it. And when you get to 5, we're done.
Okay, Ms.
Can
Isel.
you guys take out the operating budget add deletes? Or I guess, or can you still see me? I don't know.
I'm sorry, Mr. Graham, what did you say?
Can you guys see my hand raised? I'm still looking at the add deletes from the operating budget.
Yeah,
Yes. Can we show them instead?
down?
Let's take that down because we can read them out loud. I think we can read them. All right, let's go. We're going to put everybody on the screen, not just Mr. Graham. Okay, everybody's there. So the first hand raising is for $70,000 for the Historic Landmarks Commission's Fund. And I see Graham, Winston, Isolt, Newton, Eggleston, Mitchell, Watlington.
That's it.
That's it. Okay? So that comes forward. The next item is how to help with the digital divide. Okay? Digital divide.
You've got Winston.
I can read them. I'm just waiting for everybody. I have Winston, Isolt, Newton, Eggleston, Mitchell, Ashmira, Watlington, and Johnson. So that goes forward. The second one was Election Day support, day off for employees and or mail out absentee ballots. I see Winston. Okay, we have one person that will not go forward.
And Johnson.
And Ms. Johnson, did you have your hand up, Ms. Johnson?
She just put it up.
Okay, that's 2. Okay.
Madam Mayor?
Yes?
Can I ask if it's all right with Mr. Winston, if we split those two so we get 2 different costs associated, what it would be to do mail out ballots and what it would be to give a whole day off?
I just got a letter asking me if I wanted a mail-out ballot. I mean, I don't know if we have the ability by law to mail out an absentee ballot, but I just got a letter from the Board of Elections saying, would you like an absentee ballot? Here's the letter to send back in. So
I think it's a county process. So I'm not sure we can even do it.
Well, I'm not sure we could do it either, but I think, Mr. Winston, I can't hear you.
You're on mute.
Yes, that was part of the request. It was an and/or, so the staff would bring us back 2 recommendations. But anybody, you don't need to be a government entity or any entity to mail out an application for an absentee ballot. We wouldn't be mailing out absentee ballots. You're right. That is from the Board of Elections. But individuals have to fill out the form, just like the mayor was saying. This was just to encourage people to participate in the civic process.
Okay,
but this has nothing to do with a jurisdiction issue at all.
Okay, so we had 2 votes for that, so that will not go forward.
Can I just add to that, or just a comment? The way that I understood it also, Mr. Winston, is just an initiative or a push, because we don't know where we're going to be on election day, and we know there has to be some priority or some focus or some planning to make sure that people are able to get out and vote. So that's what I'm supporting, is create in the process that we know that it's a priority and we've got to look at alternatives.
So this is just not execution dollars.
I'm sorry, I don't know there is no dollar attached with it. The request was election day support, day off for employees, or mail out absentee ballots. That's what we had. So
because I get behind marketing and saying, okay, this is important, but I can't get behind us.
Well, you'll have to add that to the list if you want it to be a separate vote. So we
Well, I
have
just
the
don't know
list now.
about
I'm
what-
sorry.
That's how I agree.
Okay, so again, I had 2 people in support of Election Day support. Okay, so that does not move forward. The next item that I had is the UDO and vision plan support at $250,000. Is that correct, Marie? All right, the UDO, $250,000. I have Ms. Iselt, Ms. Ajmira, Mr. Newton, Mr. Eggleston, Mr. Mitchell, Ms. Johnson, Mr. Driggs, and Ms. Watlington. Anybody else?
I didn't see Johnson's hand, but no, Johnson.
Ms. Johnson, I thought her hand, yeah, I can see her hand up. Ms. Johnson, is your hand up? Yeah, it was up.
No, it was
No,
not
it's
up.
down? Ms. Johnson, can you tell me, were you supporting that or not, please?
It was not up.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So Ms. Johnson is not in that, but it does have enough votes to go forward. All right, and then the final one was no changes to reserve the $70,000 until after the COVID work has been done to see where there are remaining gaps. So all in favor of that, please raise your hand. Right now, I have Ms. Ajmira, Ms. Johnson, Mr. Bakari. Is there anyone else?
Mr. Driggs.
Mr. Driggs? Got 4. You need 1 more. All right. That will.
Wallington.
Ms. Okay.
I'm sorry, is that in lieu of the historic?
Well, you can't do, if to come back with a report, your final vote is next Wednesday, the 27th. You can bring back all of them, but that's not, it was to make sure that you had enough support that the information would add value to a final vote. That's the purpose of it.
Okay. Could you just repeat the item then?
It's going to be hard to do more than one of those, just FYI.
Yeah, I just want to hear what it was that the vote was for.
Ms. Johnson suggested that we reserve the $70,000 until after the COVID task force reports are submitted for any gaps that were left out as a result of that. So far with that, I have Ms. Ajmira, Ms. Johnson, Mr. Driggs, Mr. Bakari. So there are 4 people in support of that action. So it would not go forward. Okay? So the 2 that would go forward are the historic district and the funding for the UDO. All right. So with that.
In digital divide, got the vote.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, digital divide did go forward. Excuse me, I just didn't write that down.
Thank you, Councilman Eggleston, for starting this chapter of our meeting. Appreciate it, Bud.
All right. Is there any other discussion on the budget before our next meeting, which is Wednesday, when we will vote on those 3 items? And then we always have a preliminary vote to give direction to the manager to prepare the budget with the changes that would be approved by the majority on next Wednesday.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Thank you very much. We'll talk with you soon. See you Monday.